Thank you, Gil Bashe, for agreeing to join us as a guest on the DTx Circle podcast.
What a pleasure. It's a
We are
pleasure.
very grateful for your time and look forward to an exciting and enlightening conversation. Gil's career has taken an unusual path with over 30 years across healthcare policy, pharma, life science, digital health, and venture capital, and lots of other incredible stuff that you could see on internet. Gil has led health practice, and he's now the managing partner at Fin Partners. Where are we right now in terms of digital health, Gil?
We're at the genesis. Karine, we're at the very, very beginning of this. I know that for those of us who have been there, yourself and others, and your colleagues at Wellthy, we sort of feel like we're in the midst of it, but actually we're at the very beginning of it because we're shifting from the isn't this nice, isn't this interesting, isn't it exciting, to isn't this practical, isn't this advancing actually outcomes, and helping people live longer lives. So, I think I feel very privileged that I'm right here at the foundational stage of helping you and others throughout the world pull this together. And part of this, I think, is because we're just starting to now understand not just the technology, I think we actually have a very firm handle around, and we're not lacking ideas when it comes to digital health. We have a wealth or a wealthy ideas. What we're really lacking at this moment, and we're trying to grapple with, is how does it fit into the traditional system? Who gets paid for what on the economics of this? And actually, how do we integrate digital health into traditional therapeutic medicine? And so, what we're facing is not a challenge of ideas or innovation. We're facing a challenge of integration. So, I always think about ideas, innovation, integration. We're at that first stage. We actually have an abundance of ideas. We're perfecting those ideas, innovation, but we're stumbling still on the integration side. And that's why I think we're still at the genesis of all this.
Yeah, I like what you say because it looks like on the how do you call that, the environment. It's the same. We are understanding and very we are approving and saying yes, we have a problem with the climate. Yes, we have a problem with the earth. But then we have the challenge of integrating that in our day-to-day life. And I feel like it is the
Yeah.
same in the health space.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm glad you're touching on environment. I'm sorry, please. You were saying something. A little bit of our time lag here. I'm glad you brought up the planet. We're talking about health, we're talking about the planet, we're talking about innovation or digital health. It's all intertwined. They're not separate conversations. The reality is when we look at the baseline of survival, which is everything, how do we survive as people? The reality is the planet doesn't need people. People need the planet. And so we've got to start from what you just touched on, which is foundational survival. So when we take a look at a lot of what we're innovating, a lot of what we address today is downstream disease. So whether it's the planet's health or human health, we have a kind of a like fix it just in time mentality. The concept of digital health ultimately it won't just be about managing disease at the highest format of what we're trying to do. It actually will be used more universally as a platform to prevent illness on everybody's part, to think about self-care and to think about preventive disease. I just want to make a note of this. About 70 to 80% of the deaths in this country and around the world, United States and around the world, 70, 80% of those deaths are from non-communicable diseases. That includes, of course, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, respiratory disease, mental illness. Those are major causes of what I call despair, disease, and death. And when we take a look at many of these, some are influenced by our environment. Planetary health influences human health. So, planetary health influences actually cancer, heart disease, diabetes, respiratory disease, and mental illness. There's a direct correlation to what you're saying. But when I think about the possibility of technology, and you and I, probably both have smartphones. Probably most of our listeners in an industry obviously have smartphones.
Yeah, I think you touched something that we really, at Wellthy at least, we are really trying to work on as close as possible as the phase 1, for instance, of studies for drugs. We try to enter with our computing power in order to help pharmaceutical industry to better understand the disease and at the end to prevent the disease, by the way. And one of my question was, what do we need?
From just to clarify, in terms of what Wellthy needs or what society needs from communication, because I think Wellthy, first of all, Wellthy is a great platform. I mean, just for our listeners' sort of knowledge, I don't have an investment here. I don't sit on the board. Uh, I have visited the Wellthy platform. It is quite comprehensive. I actually urge our listeners to the program today to pop over and visit what they're doing at Wellthy. It's quite expansive, and I would say that technology like Wellthy has the ability to partner with the pharmaceutical industry, to take a look at how we do even drug development, its most fundamental stages. The concept of getting data from people, really important data on their cardiovascular health, their blood glucose levels, their respiratory care. Um, these type of platforms that enable remote patient monitoring are essential, and we need to engage more and more people and diverse communities in the drug development process. Platforms like Wellthy really point to those possibilities, and so I think the challenge we face when we're looking at communication is we have to lean into making digital health and digital therapeutics work. We have to find better ways to lower the policy bar, keep the regulatory outcomes high, obviously, patient safety high, but the reality is the system itself feeds on just say no. And I'll give some examples of that in just a second. But when I look at the power of technology, and I'm not just talking about device technology now, I'm also talking about the use of artificial intelligence. I'm talking about the use of databasing. I'm talking about the use of electronic health records in order to reach out to people proactively and invite them into clinical trials that might be appropriate for their well being in the future. All of that, um, we have a lot of naysayers, for good reason, by the way. I don't want to just debunk naysayers. We're frightened about cybersecurity issues. We're frightened about privacy issues. We should be frightened about these issues, absolutely. But we can't lose sight of the goal. The goal is to make people healthier, faster, and even when possible, whenever possible, prevent illness in the first place. So I think that this is something of importance. What I do find on the pharmaceutical industry side is there's a great desire to deploy technology to accelerate drug development. That's a given, by the way. And there are many people in the industry who I know I have great fondness for and great respect for, who are champions of this. But often these champions of digital health technologies in drug development or in patient care, side by side, they face internal obstacles as well. I would urge I would urge my industry colleagues to have, I will call it a day of understanding and reconciliation, where the people involved and passionate about digital health and patient care can sit down with the regulatory and medical overlords and really explore and learn together what the possibilities are, and put the pedal to the metal so that obviously we can engage the patient rapidly and create a relationship with the patient that makes them much more a partner in their own lives, in their own well being.
So, with all your experience, what type of digital solution would you predict that will make the biggest difference for patients?
Well, I will answer that in just a second, but I want to put a sort of like a sentence or two, a few sentences before that. You know, um, when we think of the biggest problems we face as consumers, we're all consumers, by the way. We're all people. We use this word patient liberally, but it's almost like we're talking about another society, like patients. We're all going to be patients. Guess what, people? At some point or another, we should all live well and be healthy and happy and get to a stage where toward the latter halves of our lives, we get to be cared for by friends and family and society, medical expertise at that point. But we're always people, we're always consumers. Let's start there. Let's start there. So, one aspect I find so curious is that we have not yet united our health system with our primary and secondary and tertiary education systems. So we teach people about chemistry and biology in theory at the younger stages of their lives. Very impractical. Not many people will go on to be chemists or biologists. But we teach the rudimentary background about chemistry and biology in the school systems around the world. We don't teach people truly about how to navigate the health system, how to navigate their loved one's health in the health system. That's a trial by fire experience. So, you asked about digital health in terms of what do I see coming up? Well, one thing I see coming up, since generations have a fascination with technology, could be computer games, for instance. I think we need to invest as a society, as a global society, in the developed and developing world, much more exciting, dynamic technology, almost like these hospital TV programs that you get to be the health professional and you get to learn how to care for and diagnose. I know when I was young, they would make these baby dolls that would pee, and at that time, people were so excited you get to change the diaper on the child. We would train generations of young people to care for a little baby. It was a part of the sort of the, I guess they called it a health education, health economics program in schools. We don't do that for us. So digital health, first and foremost, can have a very practical role educationally. That's one. Two, before I get to that, doctors are not trained on how to use digital health technologies. It's a fly by the seat of their pants approach to medicine. The doctors are asked to essentially learn as they go about digital health. There might be some CME credits they can pick up. That's voluntary, but considering the power of digital health in medicine today, it's not a requirement. The next aspect is medicine is a knowledge based profession. We forget that. It is not a tool based profession. All diagnoses, all care stems from knowing something, either about human physiology or, or medical chemistry. And that's why we have to know a little bit about drug to drug interactions. As medicine has exploded, in terms of this. I know a doctor who tells me he doesn't see, he's a gastroenterologist, he doesn't see lower GI patients any longer. He only specializes in upper GI. I know cardiologists who don't specialize in cardiology in general, they're just interventionalists or they're just cardiothoracic surgeons. The medicine is becoming hyper specialized. And because of that, it needs an integrator. It needs, it could be a physician or a healthcare professional who's charged with care coordination, but that probably isn't going to work. So, what do I see with digital health? I actually see in many cases for the consumer and for the healthcare professional integration. Recently, a nurse said to me, nurse caring for someone very dear, said to me when I said, "Well, that's in the person's chart." And the nurse said to me, I don't have time to read the MR. Now, so we have records where nurses don't have the time to read the patient's data. They're responding to moment by moment situations they see on the monitors. so they don't have the background of the patient, even when the background exists. What can digital health do? I'm going to be practical. Digital health can actually read through the EMR, scroll through years of information, and actually generate a summary for a healthcare professional that gives them in 2 paragraphs or a paragraph, hey, healthcare professional, here's what you need to know about patient John Smith. So, first of all, digital health actually is going to be the integrator and the practical foundation for healthcare professionals to do better in a specialized field where you have a nephrologist who's working independently from a pulmonologist and a cardiologist. And think about nephrology, it's dependent on those two other professions. Why are they dealing with kidney health? Because something isn't going right on the pulmonary side or the pumping side, the cardiovascular side. They're just looking at downstream in terms of fluid retention. Why? What are they trying to impact? They use a medicine there that impacts there. Digital health is going to solve a lot of those problems if we let it into our lives. So, where is it going? On the professional side, it's going to be the great synthesizer. It's going to be the great, essentially, composite wisdom for health professionals that are moving to a completely specialized area. That's over there. Over here, us, digital health is actually going to be the connective tissue between us and the health system. As we go forward, there is little reason for people involved in clinical trials or in a chronic care situation to have to run into either a site or a doctor's office continuously in order to participate in their care, whether it's developing a new therapy or taking care of themselves. Really, when we look at digital health, or in this case, remote patient monitoring, the sharing of data, we've got to create greater understanding of the role digital health will play. So those are the 2 areas I think are most pressing. One, foundational knowledge, because we're not just a little piece of the biological system. We're a complete ecosystem, not your kidneys, not your lower colon, right? Not your like left ventricular arrhythmia. It's all of it to combined. A doctor needs to constantly see the adjustment like a dashboard. That's the doctor side. On the consumer side, connective care, first and foremost. It needs to connect the patient and the doctor to make better real time decisions. By the way, we have a history for this. I started to get involved in digital health. This is going to maybe blow people's minds. In 1977, that's where I really first got involved in digital health specifically. And I was investigating the use of essentially cuffs that went around your wrists with a regular phone line, and you would transmit your EKG on a regular phone line to a center of care where they monitored your heart for post MI. It was very experimental, but it worked really, really well. That's 1977. In 1994, I published a paper examining 13,000 patients over 15 different chronic conditions and found that people who have a chronic condition were exploring and using this thing called the World Wide Web and obviously the internet. But this was pre-internet days where America Online even hadn't really launched fully yet. So what we find is patients with chronic conditions, they're in the front lines of health innovation, including digital health. Follow the patient. The patient wants to live a healthier life, they want to survive. Patients are the best laboratory of innovation going. Innovators and physicians need to understand that patients are part of the system. It's their table.
Mm. Wow, very, very interesting. Thank you, Gil. That was very insightful, let's say. You mentioned something that I would like to highlight. You say that digital solution needs to fit into the traditional system. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, look, first of all, my friend and colleague John Nosta, who's really one of the world's leading innovation theorists, often says that culture crushes innovation. And what innovators do, um, mistakenly, and sadly, it's not an intended mistake, but they believe that their idea, their innovation is so powerful, so helpful, it's so clear that it improves people's lives and patient outcomes that the system will embrace it. The system is fragmented. One piece of the system doesn't speak to another piece of the system. Payers have no idea about how product innovation works. Product innovators have no idea how payers and providers make money. Patients are trying to understand, if it's good for me, why do I have to fight the payer in order to get approval to use it? And I saw that, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it was Physicians Day, and a doctor posted online for Physicians Day, it was this week, posted online. He said, "A real good day is when I don't get pushback on prior authorizations." Or, as Dr. Mark Lewis, a great oncologist, posted the other day, he said, "Why is it that when I prescribe chemotherapy for a patient, I still have to justify an anti nausea medication? I have to fight for that." So, we have a fragmented health system in the world. The policymakers don't know what the other ones are doing. The other ones don't know what this one is doing. The patient is stuck navigating this. The culture of the health system is depressive. It's depressive for the physicians and the patients and people trying to do right by society. Now, why? Why is the issue? Innovators, digital health innovators, make a basic assumption. If I invent it and I can demonstrate it's helpful and improves people's well being, it will become available. No, that doesn't happen. And actually, an FDA in this country, in the United States, an FDA 510K approval for a medical device or a digital health device to market doesn't mean you'll be able to sell one thing, because you have myriads of people who are trying to figure out the pricing for that thing. You have pharmacy benefit managers who want to figure out how they make money. You have payers who want to figure out how they don't spend money. You have providers who have to figure out how they use it. You have patients who want it. You have policymakers who are trying to worry about the cybersecurity and how this impacts information with the patient. And rather than everybody saying, let's sit down and work this out for the patient, because if we do, it probably will save us money and keep them alive. That's a dream, but it's not the goal. The goal is not calibrated to the need. So part of this is the culture of health is depressive. And so then you add this to doctors who are really being pushed to see more and more patients faster and faster and faster. And because the system has to make money, hospitals are a real estate business, keep in mind. They've got to pay for the upkeep of the facility. So they need, how do they make money? They don't charge you like a movie theater to walk into the facility. It's a fee for service business. The doctor has to do stuff to you so that they can bill back to the payer. So we have really a system where the incentives to keep people healthy just aren't aligned. That really hurts digital health innovation. So the reality is, one, digital health innovators like Wellthy and others can play a very big role, very, very big role in the decentralized clinical trial movement. That's essential. That's one. Two, digital health, um, I believe, will play a much bigger role in senior care, much bigger role in senior care, the 65 plus Medicare population, where people need to have much more connectivity to their physician, but they don't need to be driving every week to sit in their doctor's waiting room to do this. So I think that digital health can play a greater role there. Digital health can play a much greater role with people who have rare conditions. By the way, when we think of that, that's not a small patient population. There are 30 million people who have rare conditions. So that's a lot of people. And obviously, digital health can play a role there for them to develop much more of a tracking of their own well being to see shifts in their health. Digital health can help us address health disparities. We have huge swaths of the population who are underserved. Either there's racial inequity or there's social determinants of health that are not being addressed. Digital health could be the integrator and the savior of creating a more just society where healthcare is accessible to far more people. So I actually think digital health is not just a neat trinket to distribute so it looks cool, but actually digital health should not only have a seat at the table, maybe it should have a seat at the head of the table, because information information is the glue that will actually bring this system together. And how do you get that information? In a fragmented world where people are all over the place, smart technologies.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. And you were saying when we begin that uh, medicine was a culture, and you were saying that maybe it's gonna be difficult for a doctor to adopt, for instance, a phone instead of the stethoscope he's usually having in front of you. Uh, can you expand on this also? I like your point of
So,
view on this. It's
yeah.
very interesting.
So, growing up in a certainly in a health industry, um, we talked earlier before we sort of hit the on button. We talked about the most visible symbol of being a physician, of course, is the stethoscope, and doctors wear an expensive stethoscope generally over their white their white jacket, and that distinguishes them as they walk down the hallways of the medical system. And and that's a sign. It's like, like soldiers like to show, whether it's a special medal or a special uniform or a special beret or rank, that distinguishes them and makes them feel unique. Um, Doctors have that as well. There's a culture of medicine. Now, doctors or young doctors go into this with the desire, always the desire to make a difference in the world. And what happens is they get absorbed into that culture. They too want to wear a stethoscope. And how do we know this? What's one of the most famous days in medicine? It's called White Coat Day. It is the day they begin medical school and they receive their white coat. So medicine has traditions, and we all know that tradition, or as they say in the famous Fiddler on the Roof thing, no traditions of medicine are hard to change. Are hard to change. So there's a pecking order in medicine, there's symbolism in medicine, and there's a way that things are done in medicine. Changing those things is not easy. It's not easy. So along comes digital health technologies, and certainly the smartphone has great capacity to not only listen to people's heartbeats, but to analyze them alongside of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of other heartbeats to look for unique aspects to an individual's heartbeat. It's called, I know people call it artificial intelligence. I don't believe in artificial intelligence. I believe in augmented intelligence. There's no intelligence that's artificially created. What we're doing is we're taking a lot of information and we're sort of organizing it in a way that it can give us insight. It can augment our intelligence. But why do we look at a stethoscope and I listen one on one to your heartbeat, and I have to rely on my experience and sort of hearing the nuances of your heartbeat, when I could get your heartbeat correctly, see if I had your heartbeat correctly, and compare your heartbeat to hundreds of thousands of others' heartbeats to have a better sense of your needs. Why doesn't that happen? It could happen tomorrow. It doesn't happen because of culture. The culture of healthcare creates a regulatory mindset, a payer mindset, a provider mindset, a product innovation mindset, a policy mindset, and a patient mindset. I love when people say to me that the patient's at the center of healthcare. The patient is the customer. And I say to myself, really? I've never been a customer how to wait 40 minutes in a doctor's waiting room so I can finally get into there and be seen by the person for 10 minutes. Then they give me a prescription for something that I need. And then my pharmacist says, well, your payer doesn't cover that prescription. You have to get another drug. And I have to argue with my payer to do that. and I'm the customer, really? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I might be the catalyst for everybody making money, and my health, my good health, hopefully, deprives them of that. But I think that the system of healthcare, the culture of healthcare, is the customer of the health system, not the physician, not the patient. The system is protecting the system. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a objective way, that we haven't figured out how to create a customer in the health system. Now back to what um, what you're doing, what others are doing in digital health. I want to be specific to that because you're doing great things. And again, I want to encourage our listeners to visit the site, to acquaint themselves with the great things that you and your colleagues are doing throughout the world, and how you're aligning with health innovation to make it much more practical, much more accessible and powerful. Um, what digital health can do in many cases is it is a practical platform for people as we evolve intellectually. We can get much more from the current system that we're getting today. I just want to give you an example. It's something that you touch on. I know that you're working with a great diabetes monitoring system, the AccuCheck system. I know it because I was privileged to launch AccuCheck Easy in the United States, in the 1990s, the mid 1990s, probably I'd say 1992 or something like that. Yeah, I know that's like holy mackerel, but it was essentially a finger prick system, a small, a smaller. You can actually put it on your bathroom counter. You didn't even need a table for your blood glucose monitor any longer. You could put this small device, kind of the size of a smartphone, a little thicker, but you could put it on, you could bring it with you, you could put it on your bathroom counter. You prick your finger, you put the little bit of strip, you put the strip in, and voila, it gave you a blood glucose reading. And you would be able to calibrate and know what was going on in terms of your use of insulin. Now, of course, as you know, thanks to you and others, that device is a smart device. It can connect to your doctor. It can connect to your blood insulin pump, your insulin pump, and devices, unique devices like an insulin pump, which existed in the early 90s already. It had to be handset, but it existed. Now, all of these tools are smartly speaking to each other, along with you and your health professional, and your caregivers if you need them. It's wow. It's wow. It should be universally used, but the problem is getting payment for it again. You need to have either an amazing insurance or an amazing ability to pay out of pocket. Diabetes, I might add, is one of the um, great causes of morbidity and mortality around the world. And it's as people get fatter, because we're living in an urban diet now, we're going to see more type 2 diabetes. 20% of, by the way, pre-diabetics graduate to type 2 diabetics every year. Diabetes is going to be epidemic level. We need to embrace technology and make it easier to push back the issues of diabetes. So what do I think? I think digital health now. I think that the players need to sit down and say, okay, there are certain categories, it's a given. Diabetes, heart disease, um, we've been playing around with this for years. Put the pedal to the metal. I'd also say that there are other areas that if doctors don't get aboard the digital health bandwagon, they're going to be left behind. And that includes actually imaging. Imaging is very complex. There's a lot of problems there. I get it. But I would urge people to sit down and find a way to integrate. A lot of other areas of medicine, information collecting, obviously virtual care, essentially telehealth through the phone. Digital health is going to really be a front and center. But what's slowing us down? Coin, coin, and not the coin to invest in digital health. um, the coin of like, am I going to make money or lose money from this? And we've got to resolve that faster.
Wow, that's a great, insightful conversation you proposed to us. If I can say something, I will keep in mind that we need to listen to you. as a digital solution, and as a digital therapeutics, we need to shake the system, as you mentioned, in a way.
Oh yeah, I mean, look,
And thank you for all this conversation.
oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Look, I think the passion that you and your colleagues exhibit, others throughout the digital health community and world, um, inspire. They inspire hope. Do not disregard the power of hope to get people going. The data showed Dr. Jerry Groupman, a great oncologist at Mass General, who actually was one of the inventors of the first biotherapeutic for the treatment of cancer, alpha interferon. Is a scientist. He's a physician. He's a scientist, but he's written a series of books about faith and hope. I think that inventors like yourself and others actually, certainly I'll say give me hope, but I think you give millions of others hope that the system will be better for the people we seek to help the most, who need the hope the most. Obviously, people who have urgent, pressing health concerns. And I can only wish you and the entire digital health community continued success. It's not just a tool to reach people, it is a tool to make people healthier.
Yeah, thank you, Gil. Thank you very much for this speech you've been doing. I have 3 fun questions for you that will help the audience to get to know you outside of the digital world, if they don't know you yet. If you can answer briefly, what's the best trip you've ever taken?
The best trip I've ever taken actually was a very surprise trip. I went to Egypt in 1979 um, as a young public policy professional after Anwar Sadat, the late president of Egypt, went to Jerusalem uh, to seek peace with Israel. I was sent to Cairo as the young lead of a delegation of people supporting the peace initiative. And I was received and treated wonderfully by my Egyptian counterparts. And we went to Luxor, which is in southern Egypt, to see the various pyramids there and so forth. That probably is one of the best trips I've ever taken. But a close trip to that would be my trip to the Ukraine. I've been to the Ukraine many, many, many times. Obviously, right now, much is going on there, and I've been to all the places you read about in the news. I have countless friends in Ukraine. My heart goes out to them. I I think it's an amazing place of hope and expectation. And actually, I wanted to raise it because when we look at innovation, a lot of technological innovation actually comes from that part of the world, from the Ukraine. So those are the places I think, like right off the bat, like wow.
Great. Another question for you. We are at the bar. What whiskey am I getting to you? Hibiki, Lagavulin, or a Bourbon?
I have to say, Glenfiddich 21. No doubt about it. That's my drink. But my other favorite drink, I have to say, historically, is definitely a Tennessee whiskey, Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels on the rocks with a twist of lemon. If you see me at a bar, and you want to make friends, just order me a Jack on the rocks with a twist of lemon, and I'll be your friend for life.
I note. I take note. Okay.
When we
And a
meet,
last
you'll have
one.
to buy me one. I'll buy you one.
Yeah, Jack Daniel on the rock. I write it down. A last question. If you were not in digital health, I know you have several lives before digital health, by the way. What would you be doing?
Wow, that's the hardest question I've been asked in a long time. Um, well, I'm trained as an educator and a spiritual leader, and I have a great fondness for that. Um, I probably would lean in that direction. I would probably be a community spiritual leader. And I think that, Karine, you and I and others who are in digital health, we kind of are spiritual leaders. We're evangelists for a discipline. So I would probably stick close to what I love. I would try to be a spiritual leader and a good human being, a good role model for other people to aspire to make a difference in the world.
Namaste. Thank you, Gil.
You are so welcome. I hope that this was what you would hope for in the conversation.
Yeah, you've been tackling so many interesting parts. Yeah, yes, you've been tackling everything, by the way. And we could have spent much more time, but I was really keen to look at the hour, and it's already for me 5:04, but for you, I don't know, 11 in the
No,
morning, I guess,
I
something
find
like
that
that.
the best podcasts are 30 minutes. 30 minutes is the best length for a podcast generally, about that. So I hope
Yeah,
that this was
and
the
now we
right
have
size. I
40
know Henry's
minutes.
listening.
Yeah, Henry
So
didn't
he'll stop
stop
it
the
down.
record, but